This is The Daily Divide. This is The Daily Divide, a show where we pick a story from each day and give you my take. 7 days, 7 divides. Let's get into it. On Monday, with less than a month until local body elections, turnout remains the big question. Only 40% of Kiwis usually vote. Local Government New Zealand says these elections matter more than people think, shaping everything from roads and parks to flood protection. There's not much I know in terms of local government. I'm not exactly well versed in local government. It's much more community-based, obviously. Less party politics, as one would think, but maybe more raw form of politics, rather. But I do know this. A lot of infrastructure that gets allocated from, in terms of outside of state highways, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of it is allocated to local government so they can administer how the funds go, and that also of course includes regional and sometimes more centralized local government. There's not much for me to say on this. I don't have much to say on this segment other than please vote. If you haven't voted, what are you doing? Vote now. Are you running out of time? Vote. I've voted. I feel comfortable saying how I voted on Māori wards. I voted yes, and that's my prerogative. I won't say why, but it's my opinion. I think that sticking to the treaty as it is now is beneficial to this country as we now see it. Obviously, those things can change, and they should in the future, in my opinion. But there's a much bigger problem that this country is going to run into in the future. And that is it's not Māori wards, it's the rating system. And the way that local government is funded is incredibly flawed, and it is it's a decaying system. And when you have a local, especially that problem gets more outsized or more severe when you have a local central government rather pushing all the responsibility that central government should be funding in terms of infrastructure and put them over a much smaller spread and put the cost over a smaller spread of a tax base. Of course, there's an argument that there was a conversation in the last government that there needs to be among three waters. There was talks over reforming how local government is funded. There is need for that, and unsurprisingly, this government, which I've previously called the spiteful government, decided to bin it because either they're incompetent or, like I said in the last podcast last week, they just want to put their stamp on it and put their branding on it and say it was their idea because they're selfish, full of themselves baboons who like the smell of their own farts. I think there is going to be a stage in the future, in 5 to probably not 2, but 5-10 years, that there is going to be a stage where there are going to be local government entities will not be able to, and they still can't now. I mean, I'm not saying that they can now, but they're barely making ends meet. But there will be a point, and probably if the local election doesn't go this way, probably even in the next term, if rates are capped and there's no change on how things are funded, and local and central government continues being an unsupportive parent. It's one of my theories. It's one of my many conspiracy theories, I guess. But it's theory I have on why the act is going local. It's one of the reasons that I have. One of it is that I think it's a tactic to influence local government to not only cap rates and to then sell off local assets, including water. I also think it's to instill a pathway for potential ACT MPs to get into government. I don't think it will work, but that's what they're trying to do. It's what they're trying to do. And and it's not just ACT Local. It's Taxpayers Union. I think they're called the Ratepayers Union. I think Groundswell. The game is that they're going to try and sell off local assets, which will obviously be an insane step back in this country. But the other alternative is that they're going to, and then that's what holding rates down is. They're going to hold this country by gunpoint and say, well, rates are capped. We have to sell because we can't pay for it. And that's what's going to happen. And as long as central government doesn't step in, a competent central government, I think this country will be in deep trouble in terms of infrastructure. Or already is, but it's going to be in more so. So I vote. And on Tuesday, a new poll shows more than 40% of voters want New Zealand to recognise Palestine, but the government is keeping its position under wraps until Winston Peters reveals it at the UN. The debate is heating up at home with massive protests, clergy chaining themselves to MP's office, and Labour accusing the coalition of ignoring public sentiment while Gaza's death toll soars. I'm going to start this off with end the genocide, river to the sea, Palestine will be free, and all that fun stuff. I think there's as of this recording on Sunday, we don't know what's happened. Obviously, everyone has their 2 cents. I think they've already made this. Everyone believes that this government's already made their decision. I kind of agree with that too. But the video will come out on Monday. As of this recording, it's on Sunday. It will come out on Monday morning. So I'm going to level up 2 options. They either do recognise it or they don't. I think they have recognised it, but I'll start off with if they don't. If they don't, we at the moment right now are falling back. And we are losing soft power. We're losing power in this, any power that we have globally, any recognition, any respect with our kin. With this dawdling, falling behind other Western countries, recognition. Because I believe even the UK are going to. I could be wrong. Comment down below if I am wrong. That the UK, even them, Keir Starmer, they're going to recognise Palestine as a state. And so if we don't, I think it's going to become an electoral issue. Next year, it's going to become a huge, not as big as, of course, cost of living, climate change, anything else, Māori issues. It's not going to become nearly as big as an issue with respect. Of course, it shouldn't. But it will become an electoral influence on how people vote, in my opinion. I think more specifically on national voters, who will switch between Labour and National, or maybe National and the Greens and stuff, because I've heard people do that sometimes, which is really weird. I don't think that they will. I'm leaning on the fact that they have, so I will stick with this. I'm going to stick with the fact that, hey, they've decided, Winston Peters has stood up and announced that this country will recognise Palestine as a state. How great. I mean, I'm not going to celebrate it. It's good. It's better late than never, I guess. But it's also, I think, the benefit for this government is that the fact that when they do, it will go to the past. Like, people will remember it, but it won't be as big of a deal if they don't recognize. They didn't recognize Palestine, should I say? It won't really matter electorally. It will just go in with the wind, and it'll stay in people's minds. But they won't vote for any national MPs anyway, so it won't exactly matter as much as it probably could do. I'm not going to say anything more in terms of how that this country has been sometimes a beacon of social justice when it comes to nuclear deterrence, and the Springboks All Blacks tour when it comes to apartheid in South Africa, and that split the country. And I'm not going to speak much on the fact that we were the first country to give women the vote, that we love to pat ourselves on the back, especially the National Party love to pat themselves on the back. We were the first. They love to do it, even though they'll be the exact type of people that were voting against it, that would have voted against it. But we don't remind them of that, of course not. Those ghouls know it already. But I will say this, because I haven't lived through that, but I will say this. This is as a country, this is, if Israel had a decent rugby team, this would be our Springbok All Blacks moment. The only reason why it isn't as big of a deal as that is, in my opinion, is that we don't have as much of a connection with that country as we did, stay with me here, as we did with South Africa, in my opinion, my personal opinion. Obviously, it's just as bad, if not worse. A genocide wasn't happening in South Africa, it's happening in Gaza and wider Palestine. And of course, for a very dumb reason that's being used as an excuse by Luxon now, we don't need to do anything, it's not our job, which is incredibly naive and lazy and just incredibly childish position to take. But yeah, I think they'll recognise Palestine, and I think it won't do much in terms of their electoral. It won't be as severe as the United States. It won't make or break elections. It never will. If people say they do, then they're wrong. They're just wrong, factually wrong. But it will be better off for this government if they chose to do it. On Wednesday, Associate Health Minister Casey Costello has been found in breach of the Public Records Act after using a mystery pro-tobacco document in policy development without knowing who wrote it. The paper pushed for tax cuts on heated tobacco products, a move Costello later delivered, saving Philip Morris millions, despite Treasury warnings and health officials questioning the benefits. Chief Archivist says the failure to keep proper records undermined government accountability. When this came out, so this came out, I think, 2024, when they decided to give a tax cut, 300 million. I think it's gone up to 600 million. Don't quote me on that, but at the very least, 300 million tax cut to Philip Morris, not specifically for Philip Morris, but to heated tobacco products, which Philip Morris as a company has monopoly over, or a majority stake on in this country. So it is a tax cut to Philip Morris. And I was thinking, okay, so that party's bought as well. New Zealand First Party as a party is bought as well. I've never had a high opinion back then. I have a lower opinion of that party now. There's this really weird attitude towards New Zealand First, differentiating them from ACT and National as this young gun, this pseudo reform New Zealand version of a reform party, when they've one of the oldest standing. I think they're the oldest party outside of National and Labour currently in Parliament. There's this really weird attitude towards New Zealand First, differentiating them from saying that they're different, all from ACT and New Zealand First, ACT and National, all because they've held some, at this point, still some values, some economic, and actually not all values that Muldoon had. They are descendants as a party from that Muldoon conservative think big philosophy. I mean, under the right leadership, under a Labour government that wants proper public expenditure and capital capex, capital expenditure, maybe that could honestly be true. And if that's the case, I think that now we are seeing the Green Party kind of taking the mantle. It remains to be seen if they can be good governors, because they have not been in full government yet. I would like to see them in government before I can make my decision, as opposed to these loonies and these fools completely writing them off because their name says green and they're crazy lefties and something communism, before I can make my decision if they're good governors compared to New Zealand First. Because New Zealand First have had many chances, so I'd like to give them a shot. In a vacuum, of course. No, nothing happens in a vacuum. I'm not the sole dictator on what governments. I'm not the sole vote on who leads who government. I wish, but alas, the world isn't perfect. But even that, I do concede that ground, but there are so many things that outweigh and so many influences into that party that I'd say, is it worth... I mean, in Labour, if you did something for all like there are a couple of flaws that I might have to say, either from a left perspective or just from a general perspective, that I have with that party. But what you can say is that someone like Stuart Nash doing an alleged deal with donors for kickbacks would get him booted. And for someone like New Zealand First to keep him in, and especially under the recent allegations, it doesn't show their among the same issues I have to Pāti Māori. It doesn't. It's the same thing with New Zealand First in different circumstances. It doesn't show them a good light on how they can be seen as good partners in government in the future when they take on board second-rate politicians. And I'm not even including, and Winston could come into the category, but I'm not including him in that one. I have some respect for him. I've got some respect for him. Some people might find that terrible, but I kind of do. He is a bit of he's got some legacy at the very least. But yeah, this article and this event, it reveals the fact that this party is not any different as to how board act. I think you could. I think the only differentiation is that you wouldn't say ACT and National are board, more like that is how their structure works. They are funded by capital to promote capital. And not even capitalism, more capital and financiers and foreign companies. I think that maybe the differentiation is that New Zealand First is bought, in that there are still values that promote capitalism and promote some idea of in a country business to an extent. I know that's contradictory considering Philip Morris, but I get there's some difference. It's not much, and it to be honest, it doesn't matter at all. I mean, the amount of times that Winston could have looked at, I mean, the foreign buyers ban, the amount of times that, not that I thought, but I think that he could have just gone, nah, I'm calling a snap election. He can't call a snap election, but no, I'm going to call a vote of confidence. I'm leaving the coalition, or we're leaving the coalition. The amount of events, I mean, school lunches, the IREX, well, maybe not school lunches. He doesn't care about young people. More so IREX, Dunedin Hospital, the foreign buyers ban. I'm sure there's probably. I mean, I haven't paid attention to. I wasn't even alive back then. Maybe back then, if this was happening back then, would he have left the coalition on it? Is he more adept for power? Is he more interested in the game and power more than he used to be? Or has he always been like this? On Thursday, the economy has taken a sharp hit. GDP slumped 0.9% in the June quarter, the steepest drop since the global financial crisis. Finance Minister Nicola Willis blames the US tariffs and global turmoil, but critics say it's her economic mismanagement. Labour points out Australia grew 0.6% in the same period, while former finance ministers Roger Douglas and Ruth Richardson are calling for Willis to resign. Prime Minister Christopher Luxon, though, insists she's the best finance minister New Zealand is ever going to have. And if that's the case, we're screwed as a country. Some would say fucked, but I wouldn't. I wouldn't say that word. It's a terrible word, fucked. But we would be fucked if I would say that word, which I won't. GDP isn't exactly. It's a collation of every single facet of this economy into one number. I think there were other banks. There were banks that were modeling this, but I think the other figures were about 0.4, 0.3-ish, not 0.9. So everyone was very shocked. I'm not exactly shocked, to be honest. I mean, this is a result of complete cuts to every single program and every single measure that was keeping this country breathing during COVID, and growing this country by 2.7, 2.4% on election year. So they keep forgetting that. They keep forgetting that it wasn't a recession. We were actually growing as a country. And everyone conveniently forgets that because, I don't know, something spending too much, or something we were in a recession even though we weren't. Sorry to tell you that. Obviously that the last government had flaws. The fact that there's any argument to say that the last government was anywhere near as worse as this government is laughable and pathetic, in my opinion. But they had flaws. I mean, the argument more is that, for me, is that they didn't present their ideas well enough. I think they had to explain it a bit too much. I think maybe that race was taken precedent and from both sides, not really both sides, more so the right than the left. And that's what sabotaged any chance, any progress, any growth that this country had, all because of racism. All because, I mean, that's true, isn't it? Across the world, I'm sure I wouldn't be surprised that any social democratic improvement, any competent government improvement on this country has always been sabotaged because the opposition was able to target the fact that, oh, brown people are getting it better, or brown people's lives are improving per capita. Oh, that's not good. And that's all. And you know, people look at that and go, then they'll rather vote on race. I don't think it's much true in this country, but I think that's definitely revealed how it isn't as severe. It's not as severe. I think I need to say that it's not as severe as the United States, but it's still an issue that can still be tapped into to prevent any true governance and to allow economic. I think that the benefit is that people are starting to see through it. I think the biggest question is that whether or not, look, you can say what you say what you want on Māori wards. I won't necessarily call you a racist if you're against it. I just want to hear why you think that. Then I'll decide if you're a racist. But not everyone who's a racist is against Māori wards, but everyone who's racist is against Māori wards. That's all. That's what I'll say on it. That will be the biggest litmus test, in my opinion, on whether or not we as a country have moved from that divide. Well, it's still there. We're not when I say moved on from that divide, not that the divide is closed and that we're all together, we're singing one big happy family. Absolutely not. But I think more is going into next year. Is it going to trump any proper economic change any economic reform, any workers' reform that this country needs? That's the question. So I think that looking at local government, that's something that will need to go. But apart from that, what do you expect, right? What do you expect when you halt every single construction program? When you halt, everyone brings up Dunedin Hospital as just a brilliant microcosm of every other construction project. What happens when you stop spending, or you keep spending to a minimum when it comes to housing, and you only build 45 across all the years, as opposed to 1,800 that the last government built on their, I believe, in 3 years? If you can't understand that this government is not the same as business, and that government has a role when it comes to building foundations that gives business the proper way to prosper. And when you cut off that construction and leave it to private equity, you completely lose yourself. So if we can realize that, I don't know how we can, because this has happened to us before. The fact that people still vote for the National Party still fascinates me. It genuinely fascinates me how this country's psyche continues to think that this country is. It does really interest me. I would love to look more deeper into what happened in the 90s, and to think, okay, Like, do they think about that, or do they think about the benefits of what happens in the 2010s? And even that, I'll get on to that. I'll stay on the segment, and I'll even get to that, to my point of even if we grew, there would be a challenge to that. I'm really interested. Or does it level out because of Roger Douglas? Is that the reason why? The fact that that a Labour turncoat sold this country out, and he look, okay. Was there an argument in the 80s that there would be need to? I mean, for me, I think that there is some argument to selling off some New Zealand shares, Air New Zealand shares specifically, and to use the funds slowly across time, and to use funds to better promote and to invest in railway infrastructure, to introduce more competition in interregional travel. And then I bring that up because across the Tasman, across the ditch, during that time, you had another Labour government that I don't know as much about, under the Hawke and Keating era, Hawke and Keating in Australia. And they arguably, some people call them neoliberal, in which they released the protectionist policies that they had in the 70s to introduce more capital. But they did it at an arguably better way and kept union influence. If you want to look at it more, there's other Australian YouTubers that can explain it more than me, that has more knowledge about it. But my point is that I'm not saying that privatization to some private partnerships in some specific scenarios, and that's some opening of the markets, is a terrible thing. I didn't think we would be in this much of a hole this early. It's one of the reasons why I think that I kept thinking, and I still to an extent think, that National will pull ahead next election. I think that it's really obvious that this government is on a wing and a prayer, hoping, given a Hail Mary, that the opening the foreign buyers ban up and letting people buy up property, introducing the value, hoping that agriculture does better and keeps improving. They hope that there will be some growth, even if it's a 0.1, that they'll plaster and say that we are growing the economy. And I think that will happen, and there will be growth. There will be some version of growth, but right now I thought there would be. I thought it would be much more different now. The reason why I bring that up is that I think people really need to be really careful about when National talks about. It was the same in the 2010s back then. It's where there is growth, yes. Where is that growth going? Because if that growth is going because more people are coming into the country, and that's more spenders in retail, more spenders in hospo, then yeah, of course we're going to see more growth. If it means more growth because house values are going up, and the change of a house between different asset holders are going up, then yeah, of course we're going to see growth. But is that where we need to the working people of this country? It's not really, is it? I thought that is what was going to happen. I didn't think that would be minus 0.9. I thought that, I mean, and it could be true, and it probably will be in the next quarter, that going into election year we'll see some growth, and that people will go, oh, things are improving, I guess we should vote National, because they're good economic managers. It's one of the reasons why I am a big proponent for a domestic public-private partnership when it comes to supermarket. When it comes to a supermarket third-party player coming into the market, because I want New Zealand business. I want this guy. I don't want Australian. I don't want American. I don't want Chinese. I want New Zealand business promoting New Zealand products. Obviously, that's not guaranteed, and I wouldn't be opposed on that subject. I wouldn't be opposed to a foreign like Costco and IKEA and that. But in terms of another play promoting New Zealand business, this is the problem I have with this government. You know, they seem to think that they're the party of capitalism. Far from it. The Labour Party is more of a party for capitalism. National Party is more the party for capitalists. And on Friday, senior doctors say Health New Zealand is trying to force a pay cut on them by dragging their disputes to Employment Relations Authority, an unprecedented move they call needless and unwarranted, with 5,500 doctors and dentists set to walk off the job for 48 hours next week, or this week rather. The union accuses the government of years of disinvestment and chaos bargaining, and ignoring widespread shortages. Health Minister Simeon Brown insists he wants the fight resolved. But doctors say it's the government's approach that's putting patients at risk every day. It is incredibly snarky and evil. Evil. The fact, and this party is a hitch. They are anti-union, anti-worker party. He's an incredibly, him and the whole outfit is an incredibly evil beast. The only reason that guy is in where he is and not Shane Retty is because that I'm certain is that he was able to do the hack job much faster than Shane Retty was willing to do. And so they swapped him with Simeon Brown, the little debating soldier, not even debating, it's not even a good debater, a little Pinocchio boy. Didn't catch puberty till he's 25, little child, to do the job because Shane Retty couldn't do it. There has been a history of underinvestment in the health sector across all governments, but this government is the most ghoulish at it. Of course, I wasn't there in the 50s during the first national government, so I could be wrong. They probably were the most ghoulish of them all. But I also think that because of the growing numbers, we're now 5 million, the fact that the cuts happen, and then, you know, even referencing last week, the fact that they're still trying to cap public expenditure to 30% of GDP. It's the fact that I think it's this idea that there was still at a population of 4 or 3 million, you know, or they're counting on enough people leaving the country that they can just go, oh, look at us, we've cut spending, or something to that effect. Because I don't know what they're thinking. This is why I just know it, that they are looking to sell off. It is a slow privatization. And I won't stop talking about it. I don't like repeating myself a lot. I don't like repeating myself. This is a slow privatization of health and education system that I said last week. But in this instance, the slow privatization of the health system, because any other, well, I mean, they are incompetent, even if they are an incompetent band of fools, even if that is the plan. But I can't think of, if there is no plan, what plan is there? Because it's obvious they don't in terms of public health care. Obviously not. What is there? Seriously, like, please tell me in the comments below. Tell me what is their plan. But I think they're just preparing the system for further privatization. I think if they could, they would sell off regional hospitals to private equity and say, look, we've got expenditure off the books, we're doing better. And on Saturday, Nelson, Tasman is being hit by a wave of economic blows. Floods, factory closures, and more than 300 jobs are on the line. Carter Holt Harvey is shutting its sawmill, Sealord wants to cut 79 roles, and Griffins is moving its chippy production to Auckland, and smaller closures are stacking up. Local leaders warn the region is punch drunk on bad news, with losses already topping 50 million in GDP. Unions say workers and families are being left to carry the cost while the government touts recovery. But numbers tell a very different story. I think that the big reason why, I mean, I might have just thought of it in this podcast, I guess. I think a big reason why that people haven't targeted the danger of the National Party and then the ghoulishness and the self-interest that they represent is that nobody speaks on that. Not really. I mean, the Green Party, I don't count them. Labour doesn't. They really, really don't. They're too polite. The one time that I felt proud of that party was Kieran McAnulty in his fiery speech. It might be playing on emotions, and I'm not essentially a huge fan of that. But I think the Labour Party needs to plant these personalised, because you can do it because of this government. It allows the Labour Party to do so, and the Greens and TPM to plant advertisements to specific and billboards to specific regions. You know, in Tasman, 300 jobs 300 jobs lost, 79 roles cut from Sea Lord, factory moving to Auckland. Who is this because of? Your MP's face and National. I mean, I'm sure Nelson has a digital board. If they don't, then oof. But you can do it on a static board, on a traditional billboard. They need to do that in every region. West Coast, Canterbury, Otago, Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland. They need to be more bullish, and I think that that's the best strategy. I think that the National Party right now are playing that up. Not playing that up, sorry. They're giving the opposition a gift right now. And unless, I mean, it'll be an incredible mistake to not use this. You can't just say, and I think maybe an overall personalized advertisement saying that, this government things are worse than now. Like, you can, of course, that you can say that, but I think it would be hugely beneficial to have personalized, regionalized advertisements that would go against their MP, especially in hard blue areas that aren't, agriculture dominated, because they're doing fine, obviously. But bottom line, I don't want to leave this. I want to live in Wellington. But God, I won't live the way that it is now. And that is the result of this government. They have gutted. It is not because of COVID. Yes, Wellington's not the same because of, but it's also because of the massive cuts that this government has seen through. And then Roger Douglas and Ruth Richardson say that it's not enough. Like, oh, it's underhanded. It's meek. Oh, please. They've not walked a bloody mile. Oh, I'm sure they probably blame Tory Whanau and then the Marys or some nonsense like that, and the Golden Mile and bike lanes, because of course you can't blame yourself on bad business. Heaven forbid. I don't know that. I don't know if there is a consider. I'm sure there could be with the NZCTU, with the Council of Trade Unions and Labour. There should be. With with advertisements going into election year, I think there needs to be more, and I think maybe not starting this year, but I think people need to be reminded of who is doing this. It is not, and people are really realizing that it's astonishing. It's absolutely astonishing, even regardless of any policy that Labour has introduced. No policy. Labour is already neck and neck with National. No policy. The moment Labour starts putting on the gas is when I think we'll see an uptick or a downtick. I think that's where we'll see the change. And right now we're neck and neck. I think things can only go up from now. And unless the economy can change, so the National Party can plaster the board saying, we are seeing growth, even though it's 0.1. Yeah, the Labour Party is going to see a good chance on their hands that I don't want to see them throw away, because their advisors are foolish or something. I don't know. But this is a good regionalized billboard to set up in Tasman going in election year. And a good in Hawke's Bay and that.